All right, welcome back, everyone. Well, it looks like we're all geared up for another interesting topic. In fact, the title of the topic is absolutely intriguing, and I'll tell you why. Because back in my engineering, a lot of people would say, hey, what's your vision 2020? And I think 2020 had something else in store altogether for all of us. And here we come with another topic to do with the world at 2030. But this is very, very pertinent because whatever we're doing now, whatever we're experiencing now, it will help us deconstruct the future of work. So let's find out how can leaders effectively shape the future direction of work and the workforce. And we're going to hear it from the leaders themselves. So first up, let me introduce our session moderator. We have with us Mr. Vinod Bidwaik, Vice President HR and CHRO, Cluster India, Middle East and Africa, Alfa Laval. In fact, he's someone who's armed with more than 20 years of experience in talent management and organizational development, and also comes with more than 15 years of HR leadership experience in big Indian and multinational companies. So Vinod will be joining in to moderate this fantastic panel discussion. And let me take just a couple of minutes to also introduce all of our panelists here. We have with us Mr. Saumil Mehta, Director and Country Manager, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, Brunei, with the Kraft Heinz Co. He comes with more than 17 years of corporate journey from junior manager levels to general management levels. And the journey is also included working with the most iconic global and Indian brands and organizations. We're also joined by Mr. Samir Kukade, who's a CHRO and President, Human Capital, Praj Industries Limited, a transformational leader with an experience of more than 30 years in leading human resources, leadership systems, admin, CSR, and sustainability for the companies. And that's the kind of experience that he comes with. We also have with us Ms. Avantika Suzanne Nigam, Director and Head of HR Global Business Services India, PepsiCo, an experienced HR and total rewards professional with over 18 years of deep expertise and proven results, as well as managing large-scale organizational change in talent management, HR process digitization, and cost optimization. That's the kind of skills that Avantika brings to the table, brings to the fore. So it'll be wonderful to hear her expertise and her experiences as well. We also have with us Mr. Santanu Banerjee, CHRO, Bajaj Allianz Life Insurance Company Limited, who comes with more than 20 years of experience in the industry, having spent maximum time working with the Aditya Birla Group. And in his 10 years long tenure with the Aditya Birla Group, he's managed people agenda for various businesses for the company. We also have with us Mr. R. Nanda, CHRO, Tata Chemicals Limited, who comes with over 3 decades of rich experience in human resources across varied sectors such as manufacturing, trading, retail, consumer durables, FMCG, telecom, and services. He started his career with the Murugappa Group in Chennai, where he nearly spent 15 years in a variety of roles. And he also led the human resource function for Amar Raja Group and the Dubai-based Landmark Group. And finally, we also have with us Ms. Richa Pathak Dogra, Director, People Technology, Fortune 500 company. In fact, she comes with more than 18 years of experience and has a vivid exposure to building processes and driving strategic change initiatives from scratch to successful implementations. In fact, as an effective leader, she's been instrumental in building and driving high-performing teams. So on that note, it looks like we're all set to hear from the leaders themselves. So let the discussion begin, and let me hand it over to Mr. Vinod. With that, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kavya. I think thanks for the introduction, and I'm privileged to have with this esteemed panelist, having great experience working in talent management and human resource, but also transformation and giving the transformational leadership to the organization and to the consulting to the business leader in their respective organizations. Today's topic is future in 2030. I think it's very important to understand, and a lot many context to that. How we can deconstruct that, how we can actually understand and create those narratives to communicate to the larger audience, including our employees in the society. So what actually that means, and during the last 1.5 years, it is mandatory to refer the pandemic, the COVID-19 situation, because this is not new, because we are speaking almost for 3 years about future of works, the automation, VR, and everything. But I must say that this COVID and pandemic has accelerated that. And that's how we are forced to use those technology, work on different aspects. And that actually is totally shaken. To start with, I would like to ask the panelists, and I will start with Samuel, about that. What do you think that what are those changes you see, what you were doing in 3 years back, or maybe 1.5 years back, pre-COVID, post-COVID, and what is your take on that, how we should think about, what is your thought process to deconstruct the 2030 future of work?
Okay, so good evening, everyone. The way I see this, it's not only about work, actually, it's about all the three pillars of work, workforce, and workplace, all the three. And the future will be about reimagining, all these three things coming together. Some of the foreseeable changes are, number one, obviously, is going to be digital literacy, and from being, digital capability, from being to have a good to have competency, it is going to be a must-have capability now. Every functional expert will have to reimagine to leverage technology to bridge any form of divide. And leadership, especially leadership, will be challenged to be agile and adaptive in this new paradigm. The second foreseeable change that I can think of is, reskilling programs on such changing leadership paradigms will also become, a part of the core developmental plans at each level. There can be aspects like 360-degree surveys or organization health surveys that will start dovetailing feedback on leadership, as well as organizations' capability, adaptability, and even empathy towards remote working in our workforce. Overall, everyone will have to reimagine our mental models on what can be done virtually and what can't be done virtually. Number three, wider talent pool is going to be a reality, actually, because every major organization as we speak have already agreed upon a set of roles that can be done, or that can be, location agnostic. In fact, SEZ related regulations are getting relaxed by the government and various regulators to enable those employees to work from remote location, and yet the organization can get the SEZ related benefits as well. Even welfare policies are undergoing changes to accommodate the vagaries of remote working, and this will open up access to talent, and especially those who were immobile for various personal and reasons, or those who had spare time at home but not flexibility to work from home. So that's another foreseeable change. Number four, career progression and path. I think this will undergo a sizable change again, because being locationally mobile won't be the criteria anymore for one to progress on the career. A lot of open-mindedness would be required to welcome this change, because it will cause short-term friction in both the situation. That is, whether even if we want to embrace the change, it will create some friction. Even if we not, it will. And five, compensating, so this is not actually a change, but this is, I think, a thought pointer for all of us, that how do we compensate for lack of physical interaction? While we foresee all these changes, now, one thing which is also sure is that our basic neural wiring as humans is not going to change. In fact, we will remain the same social and emotional being. In fact, our craving for emotional repartee would actually increase, because things like a warm hug or a firm handshake or a pat on the back has, almost disappeared. I think these are some of my initial thoughts on what, changes one can always, maybe we'll have to start adapting to some of these things.
Yeah. Thank you, Saumil. I think you touch upon about, and very nicely, because it's, we have a fundamental skills, and now digital skills are becoming as a fundamental skills, because for every jobs and every roles. And it's not only about the tools, digital tools, but also the behaviors, digital behaviors. So that's going to play a major role. But to connect with this, the leadership is very important, because that needs to be role modeling. And of course, you touch upon about vibrant talent pool, career progression, and emotional connect. I would like to go to Avantika, as you work in a different transformation project, what we understood. What is your take in terms of when we speak about all this aspect? What do you think about leadership? That what sort of leadership we want if we think about the future of work, and what are that dimensions and imperatives we need to think about when it comes to the leadership? Avantika.
Thank you for the question. I think I'll just take a step back and paint a little bit of a picture, further to what Saumil mentioned on how the demographics are changing, right? And I think that really determines, along with some of the societal changes, some of the regulatory changes that are happening, and that's really going to also shape what leaders need to bring to the table, in the next 10 years or as we move towards the next 10 years. I think one of the first things that, has been in play for a while, but continues to become more and more prominent is how our demographics are beginning to, see some very interesting changes. Of course, it's young. India is very young, but also we have a population that's not retiring very soon, right? Which is, which is the 35 to 45 age group, which is going to be around for another 20, 25 years still. Saumil touched upon how we need to focus on reskilling or upskilling, etc., and make sure that they stay relevant also during this time. There's also an increased focus on more women in the workforce. Most companies want it. Most employers, of course, are keen, but also there are so many more women who are talented, who are coming into the workforce. And this is also having a dynamic on, how society is playing out. You have smaller families, and childcare continues to be a big concern. And how do companies balance that out and understand what a diverse workforce really means, not just in terms of gender, which is a big priority in India, but also in terms of other underrepresented minorities, in the workforce. How do we shape millennials who are becoming leaders, today in the workforce, and how do we continue to build that talent faster and faster as we move forward? And how do we fill that skill gap? That crucial skill gap that exists today between, people who come from better educational backgrounds and better educational schools in India versus the large majority which don't necessarily create very employable talent. So I think that's one big, societal change, I think demographic change that is happening, which is affecting companies both in terms of who is consuming our products, as well as, who are the employees who are coming back or coming into the workforce. I think another one that I specifically want to touch upon is how, how the expectation of employees is evolving from what is my employee experience to what is my life experience, right? So I think pre-pandemic, this was still in a smaller scale. But as the pandemic has, has really shown us a very different side of how companies can make a big difference to employees. The employees that are coming out winners are the ones that are really caring for the whole person and not just for that employee who comes in and takes a paycheck and needs to be given some skills and given a career, etc. So I think if I look at that whole dynamic, and I'm just going to, focus on these two levers, I think some of the things that used to be great to have, like agility, etc., are now just fundamental. I think leaders just need to have, a much higher level of agility, much higher level of empathy, far more forward thinking, far more strategic than they have needed to be. I think managing a diverse workforce, a hybrid workforce, again needs very different skill sets. So I would say that as we look at leaders of the future, a lot of those great leadership skills are now becoming more and more fundamental. And your dexterity and your ability to change and evolve with the changing marketplace, the changing regulatory environment, the changing workforce, the changing consumers, the changing activism in from our investors is really becoming a completely new ballgame.
Yeah, thank you, Avantika, for your insight. I think you rightly said, and we actually, for the last few years, there are different leadership model, and we are speaking about agile leadership or transformational leadership, what's saying. So imperatives and the core of the problem or core of whatever we are looking forward remains same. And it always touch upon with the human being as when we speak about how the human being has the insight. What are those roles and what the impact of changing roles will have on the human being, on the society at a large. And that's how I would like to come to Nanda, being a Tata, working in a Tata, and Tata themselves are the role model for other industries. There are many things we can learn and we inspire to take from the Tata. So Nanda, what is your overview about this? What do you think that what is there? What are those things we need to consider as the society? And what are those stories we need to create to make the society ready? Because I still listen and people call me, and one of the, Avantika, you touch upon about the aging population, which actually still will be the workforce. And we like or not like, still the companies have the biases about the aging population. They want a young, vibrant. We always speak about that unconsciously. What do you think about, Nanda, how we can prepare the world? Or world is a larger things we can't change, but how we can prepare at least our employees, their colleagues, their society at large, and make them ready for the future. I'm not speaking about 2030 at least, but 2025.
Yeah, thank you, Vinod, and nice to be here. Good evening to all of you. I don't know whether it's possible to really predict, what is going to be required, because I think the last 1 year, last 1 year has shown us that, things can change so dramatically and so fast, and you have to necessarily make changes on the go. There's no way of preparing yourself for it, and that's a reality today in terms of even when we had the second wave, in spite of all the understanding that we had from the first wave, we actually went through a very tough phase because the scale as well as the nature of impact was significantly quite different. But I think what I see happening, if we were to really look at across this, I think organizations are now going to be looking at automation in a far more higher plane of things. Because I think it's very clear that if you can minimize the footprint of physically having people inside, that is one big insurance against future risk. So while organizations, they have traditionally shied away from investing very heavily in automation because they felt that, workforce was available, it was easier to do it. I think we'll now start looking at it quite differently because they've understood that there is a huge risk involved by having many people in the congregating in one place. So that's one thing that's going to happen. The second thing which I also see is that from a labor mobility point of view, when I talk about workforce mobility point of view, I think we are going to be increasingly seeing, compared to what it used to be 5-10 years back, where people were more willing to relocate and more willing to go into new places, there is going to be clearly a reconsideration of that from a more governed by their own family circumstances and pressures and pulls that they would have. So that's going to be one factor that we have to keep in mind. Of course, there's also the other side where we are saying we are opening up access to many talent pools that are lying in many other parts which we traditionally didn't have access. But all that may work up to a point. The fact remains that there are certain jobs for which you will need people out on the field or out in the place, which you cannot eliminate immediately. That's still going to be there. And therefore, then getting such people who are not from that particular locality or from that thing and wanting to make a shift will definitely be something that we will have to see how it goes in terms of what the change is going to be. The third important factor, I think, is really going to be in terms of individual managers and leaders understanding the way they can manage their teams in a completely virtual environment. And we have had this experience because we are traditionally, while I have worked in a services sector and a non-manufacturing sector for a significant part of my career, but in this current role that I do, we are predominantly manufacturing company. So by large part of my managerial workforce are not used to working virtually. They are completely used to having teams all around them, day in and day out. And suddenly when we took a decision last March that we will completely switch to a work from home scenario, at least for all the non-manufacturing locations, many managers, really found it very difficult in the initial few weeks. And even the plants, we took a call that we are going to make sure that those who don't need to be inside the plant should actually work from home. So if they can do it, there's no need for them to come and create more crowd inside the plant. Now, even for a plant situation, this was a big change because managers have never worked that way. So it is a completely new way of looking at things. And there are some managers who are very adept at it. They naturally align and then settle into it. But a significant portion of the managers initially find it very difficult. And they need to be really coached. They need to be really told what is to be done, the typical do's and don'ts of what you will do. And that's something which I think slowly people are understanding, they're getting the hang of it. And I think this is I would say a circle that people go through, but people will learn. And I think the more facilitative an organization is to provide avenues for this experimentation in small scale, make those course corrections, I think those organizations will find better success, find better avenues for prospering. Whereas organizations that still believe in doing things very typically are really going to find it difficult, because the world is going to change at a rate and a pace and a rate which is far, far more than what we've all seen so far. I mean, those are my 2 bits that I would like to add.
Thank you, Nanda. I think you use the word, and thanks for specifically mobility is the major things coming, and then that is also one of the employee value proposition to attract the right talent in these circumstances. And another factor I like is experimenting, because somehow in a process we miss that experimentation. We don't allow, because there are processes, systems, and then we have work in this way only. That approach goes. I came from a manufacturing, engineering, and equipment companies, and it was always said that our employees can't work from home. Remote working is not, except sales and few roles. Samir also is coming from similar company. As per the situation, we play the role either customer, vendor sometimes, and all the competition. So we have a good relationship as an organization. Sometimes we are customer to each other. Sometimes we are competing with each other in the space. Yeah, and Samir is my good friend. We actually interacted a lot of occasions on a panel, and even I actually take a lot of inspiration from him in this sphere. So Samir, over to you. What is your take on this, considering the specific industry domain? What are those changes you are actually experiencing, and what is your take that what will remain there, and what the way of working will be in the future?
In fact, I think most of the preparation what I did, many of the panel members have already spoken about. So yeah, I will speak something different. I will slightly go back, because I can see there is an impetus because of the pandemic. We are talking about the new way of changing, new way of working, and also and so forth. But let me tell you that for so many years, and if I go back in early 90s or mid 90s, when the globalization started in India, from there this concept started coming, what is current versus future. Because till that time we were protected industry, there was nothing new coming into the way, everything was controlled, and there was nothing to talk about what after some time. It was similar, because maybe earlier generations of ours must have been joined in a similar environment and retired also in a similar environment. But then, especially after mid 90s, the change started coming in, and the kind of innovations, A, in communication, B, in doing the business, C, in the demand and supply scenario, the workforce started realizing the change in work environment, and that is the difference. And whatever happened, and for the first time in this pandemic, something different happened, and our response also was different. There are so many pandemics have come in last 30-40 years, but we never reacted to that with the lockdown. And a loud lockdown means stoppage of the industry wheels, and that never happened. It must have happened in pieces. It must have happened in different parts of the global world. And then what happened to the situation is that any recession, if you see earlier, either as those who have studied the economics, there is a demand versus supply, and either demand is more and supply is less, or supply is more, demand is less. These are the recessionary conditions we have seen and studied in our academics. For the first time in this pandemic, we had both low. Neither supply was up nor demand. And that was a very unique situation, according to me, and which pushed the whole industry to rethink what we are doing and what would be the way out. As Vinod said very rightly, that manufacturing, engineering people used to be jealous of IT people, that they have a work from home facility. This is the this is the facility, or this is one of the factors which IT people are enjoying. But then after experiencing the work from home, I'm sure that there would be a push that, okay, we go back and work in office. We don't want to work from home all the time, because the thin line between work life and personal life has gone completely. So the biggest change has happened, that there is a complete change of a paradigm shift in the mindset of employees' mind, how the work can be done, number one. Number two, industry as a whole, economics as a group, and countries strategic think tank, they have always failed after 2000. What would be the scenario after 10 years, 20 years, 15 years? I'll give a small example, and then I'll come to the point, and I will talk about the kind of changes what you asked me. Like in last 10 years, if you see, there is a huge impetus on green environment, because we are realizing that we are using the resources of the earth in so much of a rapid way that after some time we are going to face a lot of issues. My company is into the biotechnology, and we work on a greener environment, green earth. Okay, all our products, or most of our products, are towards waste to wealth and reducing the carbon footprint from the world. So when 10 years back, somebody would have said that there would be electrical cars, there would be cars with ethanol mix, there would be fuel which will be out of bio way, nobody would have believed. Electric car was a fantasy. Fuel other than fossil oil was a fantasy. Okay, we would have seen that in Bond movies and other movies, but then now in 10 years it has become a reality. And the government, which was saying that we would like to mix ethanol at 20% in fuel, because we are depleting with the fossil oil. A, B, India is a largest importer of the fuel from outside, and we are putting a lot of money into that. So our objective as a government was that by 2030 we will mix 20% ethanol into the fuel. In 2 years' time, because of the pressures we are feeling, that government has now preponed their program to 2023 from 2030. Now you can put the kind of a relation between how the workplace would undergo change. Energy, bio way, then completely going into the green way, and then less harm to the earth. This particular thing is going to promote a lot of businesses which are working in a green area, which was not having a kind of a push and pull in past. Automobile, which never thought other than luxury, looks, and other important factors which are appealing to the customer. They are talking about fuel efficiency, they are talking about car, they are talking about hydrogen, they are talking about hybrid cars, and then whatnot, electrical cars, and everything, or solar also. Yesterday I saw the solar car getting manufactured. So all these things are happening, and by 2030 this canvas is going to change on automotive. If you see chemicals, again the chemical is going to pollute the industry, or society, and the sources of water and air and everything. So that is going to go more of a bio way. It is going to be from chemical to natural ingredients which are available in the society. All customer focused businesses are going to e-way. Now you can this, and I'm not saying that this is the example, because this pandemic, once it's over, Indian mindset is that going back in the market and having touch and feel. But then everything will not go back to the zero or where it started for. Then eBay, e-commerce is going to get a huge push on that. Pharma, from reactive to proactive medication is going to be the key. So you can see in India, more and more vaccines. Still today we are supplying 50% of the vaccines to the world. Okay, but still that is going to go up. And from reaction to prevention, I think that would be the mantra in pharma. And in FMCG, from maybe 20 years back, 15 years back, we were on the need-based purchases. Now it is coming back to a very different paradigm, that is delight-based customers or purchases. So these are the things which are going to impact on the companies and the way we work, how we respond to the needs, and the whole change. One is agility, what Avantika talked about, the leadership agility, then innovation. Then third is how best we are on cost will be the key. And the fourth thing is that how I can keep my employees engaged. And those days that we can retain people for 10 years. Even if we can retain people for 3+ years, now HR is happy with. So all these changes are going to come from the market, because any change will come from the market, will get ingrained into the system of the company or organization, and then it will move to the workforce for the change through the leaders. And that would be the trajectory is going to be in front of us up to 2030. But then it is very difficult to predict how it will be in 2030, because there will be significant and humongous changes the way we do the business till 2030. But it would be exciting to see.
Thank you, Samir. Yes, rightly said. Regulatory things coming, accelerated, digitalization is accelerated. So we used to use this jargon, VUCA, in few years back, but now we started experiencing that, and actually everything in the life is accelerated. Richa, what do you think about this all with this VUCA and people aspect? So what is your take on this?
I think my esteemed panel members have shared a lot of their views about how these things are changing, how the VUCA world is moving forward. One of the aspects that I think I would want to bring in here is around with the changing environment, with the changing marketplace. One thing that we've noticed is that the shelf life of the skills that employees have is fast reducing. Right? And that's one thing that I think organizations as well as the leadership needs to really focus on, to make sure that reskilling and upskilling of the employees in the organization is something that's constantly thought about, and it sort of gets ingrained in the DNA of the organization. It has multiple benefits. Of course, it helps retain good talent. That good talent sees this as an effort by the organization to invest in them and help build a level of loyalty towards the organization. So I think as organizations think about the future and the future of work, and as they strategize, agility, I think everybody's spoken about. I think that remains in the core. It's no longer a good to have, it's a must have, right? If organizations need to progress in the VUCA world, they have to be agile. They have to have agility in every aspect of their business, right? From the strategy that they're driving, right from the processes that they're setting up, the technologies that they bring in. And of course, the same mindset needs to be drilled into the employees in the organization. So the people aspect also needs to be considered. And when we specifically talk about people, that's where the whole skilling piece comes in. And here, when I'm talking about skills, I'm not particularly talking about hard skills, because more often than not, and even right now, as we talk about future of skills, people are still, within the organization, leaders are still hung up on their traditional hard skills or the technical skills or functional skills. Well, of course, functional skills will evolve over a period of time because of the need of the business and how the business changes. A very critical aspect will always remain the mindset, or the soft skills that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because that is something that will continue to determine how agile the people of the organization are to be able to adapt to the changing environment. So, and when I talk about soft skills, I think there was a survey conducted sometime last year by World Economic Forum, and they talked about, what are some of the skills of the future that will be required for us to win in the marketplace, right? Things around, learning agility, around problem solving, creativity, self-management, basically things including active learning, resilience, their ability to handle stress, flexibility. So these are things, I think, these are skills that the people will have to have as we look at, their being able to adapt to this VUCA world. And when you have people in the organization with a mindset to learn, adapt, and change quickly, it becomes that much easier for organizations to be agile and adopt, different business models, or different strategies to be able to pivot quickly. And that mindset is something that brings in, that culture of agility within the organization, because obviously it is people who create the culture in the organization. So we have to drill that down, I think, within the employees, within people, within leaders, particularly, so that they move away from the mindset of hard skills or functional skills and start looking more at, the softer skills which, once they are equipped to be able to, manage their careers in a fast changing VUCA world. Hard skills will become redundant. And I think that's the biggest disservice that sometimes organizations do to their employees, because they focus so much on hard skills. And once a pandemic like this hits, so many people lose their jobs because the skills were redundant. They're not able to adapt quickly. So I think somewhere it's that social responsibility as well for organizations as we talk about skilling them, because it's not just a win situation for the organization. It has to be a win-win for both sides, for the organization as well as for the employees in the organization. How are we equipping them to be future employees, not just employees for today? And when I talk specifically about skilling, I would also want to give a little bit of an external perspective. It's not just about skilling your internal colleagues or your internal employees in the organization. How do you also then build that future pipeline for yourself as an organization externally in the market, right? What are you doing maybe to give back to the community in terms of providing that upskilling opportunities to people outside, people who may not have access to trainings that sometimes people in organizations have, people in maybe tier 2, tier 3 cities, or look at campus grads, for example, especially in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. We see a lot of organizations focusing on this category of pipeline, right? Campus grads, for example, helping building, curriculums for them so that they're more future ready. And they're more ready to join into organizations and get more adapt at picking up what the workplace environment is. So I think it's not just about survival anymore. I think it's about business continuity. I think it's about building your pipeline for the future, because as you change, you have to have that ability within the people and within the employees of the organization, as well as the external marketplace, for you to be able to attract that talent which is relevant for you, and for you to be able to retain the talent that you have in the organization. So those are my
Thank you, Richa. Santanu, you came from an industry which is very high demanding, and specifically during this pandemic, there are a lot of challenges, I think. One thing is about business continuity, selling the product, and second is about delivery. What do you think how you are affected, and what are those skills that you think your team needs to work on in the future?
See, we are positively affected. We are not negatively affected, like say so many industries. Actually, the demand is going up, specifically for health insurance and life insurance. People are suddenly realizing the need. And after a long time, from a push product, there is a need for the product which is getting developed in the market. So when a need for the product gets developed in the market, then the kind of talent pool it's able to attract, that improves. That has been seen in a lot many industries, industry after industry, FMCG being the classic case. So probably if today Indian market attracts the best talent, it is the FMCG sector which manages to attract the best minds. We do apologize to the other sectors. However, insurance got a big boost. Insurance got a big boost in terms of improving its image as a potential employer. The second thing is, I'm very happy to see as a HR professional emergence of innovation. वो कहीं खो गया था, कहीं छुप गया था, कहीं दब गया था. People like us who only demand end of the day the output and base our reward system on those outputs, which we do at least in insurance, and I'm a party to that. Because of people like us, innovation had fled somewhere, and very happy to say that emergence of innovation is something which is very, very prominent in this pandemic, and no CEO, no CHRO can claim the credit for that. It's COVID who can claim the credit for that. But the good part of the story is the second part, which is very, very interesting, is that innovation is not necessarily coming from the top level leadership. The innovation is coming across the organization. Sometimes it is coming from mid-management, sometimes it is coming from junior management. And what I believe is this will lead to new leadership paradigms in organizations. And in very bureaucratic organizations which follow structures, a lot of structures. I'm not saying that from tomorrow they will become consulting houses where there will be only junior consultants and senior consultants, but there will be breakdown of these hierarchies in the long run, and new paradigms of leadership will emerge, and probably will have much more flatter structures.
Yeah.
Now everybody talks about gig. I'm hearing a lot about gig. A lot of companies did a lot of thing on the LinkedIn profile. But if you ask each of the CHRO that how many critical positions they could give on gig, they will say that, sorry, Vinod, let's talk something else. However, what will happen in the long run in the gig kind of a scenario? What I believe is what I call family employment or community employment. So what will happen is, if there is a family of say 10 people or say 5 people, of which 3 are employable, one may be recently retired, the other may be at the age of 35, and the wife may be at the age of say 32 or 33. In this kind of a scenario, propositions will crop up at a family level, which is at a unit level, and probably at a community level, where these kind of gig combined propositions will be created, so that gig actually becomes what gig should become in India, and not a place for CHROs to display how they're doing gig in LinkedIn. So that is something which I believe will be a big transformation as to how workforce in India will get transformed in the days to come. And the final one, I believe, and I will end with this, is that right now in India, compensation, I believe, at least in the kind of sector I operate, demands 95% of the, if I talk about choice factor while choosing an employment, compensation decides 95%. So if there are 10 factors, compensation will be 95 and the rest would be 5%. That would change drastically. People and employees have noted very seriously which are the companies which are serious with employees and which are doing LinkedIn service. And they have taken note of that. And I believe that there would be 2 or 3 distinct kind of companies which will emerge after this. And there, the value proposition will be enriched by things which are much more than compensation. And hence, the work of HR and CHROs will become more complex, but will become more enriching simultaneously, because itna din se jo bol rahe the full value proposition, so somewhere down the line we'll be able to actually experience and give employees a complete package as to what we are offering in terms of place of employment, in terms of agility of policies, in terms of care policies, and compensation, and so on and so forth. So that will be a big differentiator, which again is thanks to all COVID Baba.
Yeah, thank you, Santanu. I think, yeah, you rightly said that is a total reward, not only compensation, but your your flexibility in the environment, your workplace, how beautiful it is, what the flexibility you have in doing your job. So I can correlate that mainly in a three dimensions. One is how you create the emotional workplace, one thing, or psychological workplace. Second is about how you create a digital workplace. So digital means how people are fast to connect with each other, and what are, because nowadays, and millennials specifically, or the Z generation, it's more about technology. So how digital plus technological workplace. And third is about social workplace, how you create, and Santanu, you rightly touch upon about family employment or community employment, but also the social dimensions of the workplace, that how we are creating, because external world definitely will have the impact on us. I think we are running on the short, very good discussion. I think 1 hour is not enough for such discussions. But I will just ask you one question, everybody, that if we want to unleash, or if we want to deconstruct the DNA, every organization has DNA. In Alfa Laval, we call as an Alfa Laval DNA, where it's more on people, planet, and profit, or a customer, planet, and people, where we actually have constructed our DNA around that. If I ask you that, okay, that DNA need to be recoded, and right now you must have seen in the vaccines, they actually also RNA things can, and they actually putting something into that, reconstructing that for the antibodies. So if you want to reconstruct your DNA as an organizational DNA, what are those top 3 things you would like to add on that, layers, or what we get on the DNA samples? What are those top 3 things you would like to add in your organizations? I can ask this, Santanu being a last, so we can start from Santanu.
I think mostly I shared what are the top 3 things. I think innovation is something which definitely is required in large doses. And I have a strong belief that in 2030, a lot of tech companies, which are now, and I make this distinction between tech companies and innovation companies. Some of the Indian companies are tech companies. Apple is an innovation company. So tech company and innovation company. So innovation companies will replace tech companies in the top of the hierarchy of the Fortune 500. There would be a lot of innovation companies which may not be necessarily a tech company. So we make this, we find it very difficult to make this distinction today, that innovation and tech go hand in hand. Even in org structures, we find the CTO often heading innovation. Not necessary. कहीं पे लिखा हुआ नहीं है, कहीं पे स्टैम्प दिया हुआ नहीं है कि CTO is the only place of innovation in the entire organization framework. So I find that innovation is going to be extremely important in not only defining business models, in defining business continuity, and defining business excellence.
Thank you, Santanu. I think, yes, you rightly said, not necessary it's the innovation should happen at all angles. But when we speak about innovation and technology and all these dimensions in the organization, it is totally different skill set. So maybe Nanda, what do you think about that? What are those elements we should add in the organization apart from all this aspect what we discussed?
I think it's more or less similar. I would say that the ability to relook at all the work processes that we are so used to is clearly going to be one of the requirements. And as we even talk about, I mentioned earlier about how we will have jobs getting replaced because of focus on automation. And this will really mean that you will need people of a completely different caliber, even at the level of operators, to run those parts of the organization, which today you can manage with anybody who's walking down the street. So I think these are things that will definitely happen in the way the thing evolves. And I think the cultural issue, I think we should probably be able to align to it will be that I think work from anywhere is really going to be something that is going to be lending itself to far more as a great value proposition for organizations. And I don't necessarily mean that people will not come to office. It will certainly be a hybrid environment. But organization must say that it does not care where you are located. There are occasions when you need to come, you should be available. Beyond that, as long as you're able to deliver, it does not matter to us. And we're quite happy to have you as part of the team. These things, I think, will become far more important. And within that, I think also the ability of organizations to be very flexible in terms of even working hours. So not insisting upon it, let's say 10 to 5 or 9 to 4. It will not be that. It's basically saying that this is what needs to be delivered. There are certain portions of time when you need to be available because there are interactions that are required to be done. Beyond that, you get up at 2 a.m. and work, that's perfectly fine. Nobody's going to worry about it. There's no check-in and check-out process that's going to be there. But these are all, I would say, cultural elements that we will have to necessarily get used to, get ourselves familiar with, and start making the best use of what is possible. Because unless we are willing to really look at very differently the way that we are currently structured, we cannot move. In fact, when I have interaction with my team, I tell them very clearly, I have nothing to lose because I will retire soon. But for all those who joined the company today, I tell them, your jobs will get eliminated. And don't think what you're doing today is going to be there for the next 20 years. It's just not going to be there. So can you start looking at what can you do differently and completely in a new manner that will keep yourselves employed and keep yourselves better? And that's a reality. We cannot run away from it. That's really going to be the reality. So I think these are some of the things I think is very important in organizations.
Yeah, it's going extra mile. I'm coming to Avantika. What do you think that they're on this in a talent management perspective? What are the impact and what we need to do differently in time? Because everybody knows that this is our typical talent management model. We assess, we define the talent, and then we work on that. But still, it is always the mystery how many successes we create, and every organization struggle to that. So what do you think that what innovations we should bring considering the future?
I was about to actually say what Nanda said towards the end, right? I feel the onus of talent management, the onus of careers is disproportionately thought to be with the organization. And just going back to your previous question as well, if there was one thing that I could add into the mix, it's employees thinking about the future of work. Right? Companies are sitting and worrying about and thinking about, and actually speaking, I think most good companies, right, will come out very positively on the other side because we have great leaders, great teams who are constantly thinking about what is coming next and how are we evolving for this and how will we get our workforce to, adapt to XYZ changes, how will we adapt to consumer preferences, etc. Right? What I do think is a missing link, and Samir alluded to this so beautifully in the, when he spoke. There wasn't as much change in the environment in the past. And so we didn't need dramatic change in employees and in leaders and in mid-managers, at the pace at which we do now. And given the way the environment is changing, given the way job requirements are changing, how technology is playing such a big role in whether you are relevant or not, I think leaders and managers and employees, and the big focus is on the large mass of employees who are neither managers nor leaders right now, really need to start taking far greater interest rather than waiting for their organizations to do something to them to make them skilled and make them upskilled, etc. But they really need to take that in their own hands, just before we start having a ton of who moved my cheese moments where you have a ton of people who suddenly don't have are no longer employable. So I would say I think there's great work happening on talent management across the board, right? I actually think that we're very hard on ourselves as an HR fraternity, but we churn out great leaders, we churn out great managers. We are so focused on our high potentials, on our high performers, and we really want to wrap our arms around them and retain them. I think it's the vast majority of the key contributors that really need to start thinking much, much harder on what's going to happen next in their own careers. How do they want to shape them and how will they play to their strengths? That's my view on this one.
Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Saumil. And then,
Okay, some of the things that I would like to get coded on the DNA of the organization, and it's already in my current organization, it's coded right up there. It's one of the 6 vision statements within that. So there are 2 things that really stand out. And these are, like, I would say, ubiquitous things, and these things have stood the test of times. And these are irrespective of what changes it's going to make. So one of the things is that we own. It's just two words. We own. That's it. So that's the DNA coded to be on the DNA of every employee, that you have a high amount of ownership. And ownership is a two-way thing. It's like rights and duties being the same, two sides of the same coin. So when you talk about ownership, you own success as well as failures both. You own the entire company and everything that comes with it and goes with it. The second thing is, especially in fact, it's going to be slightly more critical. Again, a ubiquitous thing, but slightly more critical, especially from the way workforce, workplace, and work will evolve. It is, we do the right things the right way, because in a remote working scenarios, a lot of us will not have that prying eyes of your managers, right? Sitting at the desk, or there's not. We are going to be giving more freedom and flexibility for people. Mr. Nanda mentioned a 2 a.m. call is something which is there. So in that situation, how do we, every employee is his own manager in that context. So trust the employees to do the right things the right way. And how do we have that DNA inculcated in the organization? Because it's again one of specific to Indians. We Indians have this very tendency of, we are control freak characters, and that's really an Indian way of working. Okay, it's not. How we as managers let go some of these things, that urge to control, the urge to micromanage, show it to our boss that I know the number down the line to the last outlet, not just the salesman also. So, I mean, that's micromanagement. How do we let that urge, release from ourselves and trust people to do the right things, right? I think these are the two things that needs to get coded from top to bottom to, help us sail through this evolution easily.
Very relevant. They said that you create a trust capital and create that trust capital during the good days so that people will be always with you in bad days. Very, very important imperative in the people management aspect. Over to you, Richa.
I think the top two things that come to my mind are, the collective growth mindset of the organization, that drives them towards any change that's happening. Because we all talked about agility, right? Everybody alluded to it in some shape and form. But before agility comes, once you recognize that something needs to change, but that acceptance of something that needs to change or something that's not really working, I think that's where growth mindset comes in. So I think that's where, people within the organization as a whole and as a collective need to, develop the skill set or the mindset in understanding and accepting and acknowledging that, there is a need for change. And then, of course, have that agile culture where they're able to pivot quickly. Because unless you recognize something needs to change, we sit in a cocooned environment with blinkers on, thinking what we're doing is right, what we're working on is what will work maybe even 5 years down the line. We don't have our ears to the ground. So I think that's something that is imperative for organizations if they want to be innovative organizations, as quite a few of the panel members have been involved.
Yeah, thank you, Richa. Samir, any concluding thought on this?
I think all three, Nanda, Avantika, Saumil, and Richa talked about innovation. I would say that is innovation leadership, because not only the innovation is important, but the innovation leadership is mattering to the industry or organization. Then, secondly, we talked about agility, which was, I agree, I was thinking the same thing, because agility makes the organization ahead of the competition. Third is definitely value proposition for all stakeholders and attracting those, be it customers, be it suppliers, be it employees, shareholders, everybody. So creating that value proposition is very important. But then most important thing in an Indian mindset, okay, I think we have been always putting that as a GE culture or American culture, outcome. Okay, everything is driven by outcome, but then outcome is the reality of the organization. If you are not producing right results, whatever you are good, you are going to vanish from the scenario. So I think the main agenda would be the focus of efforts to outcome. Yeah. So people take a pride in saying, I did so much. I worked for 10 hours. I did so many meetings. I brought so many ideas. But then if it is not going to get converted into the outcome and results, I think that result-oriented approach will play a huge role in the success of the organization. Just one comment I would like to make before I conclude. You asked about the talent management. I think the complete human resource community is under illusion that we do the talent management and talent development. People who are having the career mindset in their thinking, they find out either your organization or outside. That's how we have attrition. I think the organization role comes into play, that what kind of a talent I have. I don't want to do a good noble work of converting that into the development and becoming my talent pool. But then if what company is requiring, what they are, and that fitment, if we can do in a best way, I think then we are doing the justice to talent management. And then based on the company's requirement, if you are giving the inputs to grow and making them engage and having a right engagement levels, then I think that would be the real talent management and development, rather than just taking a pool of high performers and high potential and just running the run-of-the-mill development programs. It's not going to help in talent management.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Samir. I think one of the comment on talent management or any HR initiatives, we assume that these are HR, even employees and managers, HR processes. I don't think that these are the business processes. We should keep in, and that's why always we HR think. And we also, as a HR professionals, also need to let it go to the managers and give them accountability, educate, coach, and train them going forward, because they are the owner of the processes. We are facilitator as a HR things, and that makes wonder if you give the accountability to them, it will have the impact. Of course, there should be a cross checks and balances in between the required. I think my take is on that 2030 is too long to discuss, because this pandemic changed the total narrative in 1 year and 2 years. We don't know what will happen in 2023, 2025. So we should start thinking what is there next year at least, and then prepared for the future, prepared for the 2025, 2030. And it's about actually reconstructing everything. It's our mindset, our value proposition, what we think, and mainly start from the leadership and then creating that atmosphere within the organization. I'm thankful for you, very good insight. I think time is the problem, but thanks a lot for your inputs, and looking forward to interact more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vinod, for beautifully summing up that lucid discussion. And thank you indeed to all of our panelists for joining in and for sharing your thoughts with all of us. Thank you once again.